The word was spoken by the mouth of the prophets. Let it be. Times of hard working and poverty of souls. The flesh is at a crossroads. Behind the walls of lies, vices of hearts, the human heart despises the truth. Doomed to misery, blind slaves, systems of hungry spawn. And among all this crowd, nuggets hide in empty apartments on the outskirts of cities, tormented by everyone and at all times, utter the word of life with pure lips. The weak string will sink into the deep of oppression, and after it, a new life will be reborn under the all-seeing eye of God, the Spirit of Truth.
I welcome you to the Movement to the Light platform. We will not tell you how to act, how to think and what to do. We only give you access to information and how to dispose of it. Decide for yourself. I want to say in advance that you should not look for justice, but you should look for yourself and your place in this world. Because in the world of manipulation and deception, it is difficult to find the right answers. From our side, they'll also not be given. Only the keys will be given so that you can independently participate in the assembly of the game called life. And today, it's time for the third series. Ignorance is the cause of suffering. Ignorance is the cause of suffering because ignorance is the choice of people. People have chosen ignorance because they want to suffer, because this desire comes from knowing themselves. Ignorance of oneself is the path of ignorance, since it detaches a person from the essence, but it fixes him in suffering. Since suffering in attachment to the temporal, the essence of man is the eternal. The eternal isn't temporary, but the present which flows from the spiritual. The temporal flows from the material gives a person the realization of the passions, but doesn't give the realization of the present. And where is no present, the passions are wishes and the world is sinful. The sinful world is based on ignorance, because it has turned away from the truth, turned away from the good in the name of evil. And all evil hides itself in the passions of man which are out of control. Control is the knowledge of the eternal, the knowledge of oneself through the Spirit of Truth. The Spirit gives a person to find love, gives them to find good through self-knowledge. Any other knowledge without the Spirit of Truth is the path of ignorance, which gives initially blind hopes, but eventually leads to suffering. In the last program, the topic of suffering was touched on slightly, because I wanted to focus on loneliness and its causes, but today we'll talk about the suffering of people. I have already mentioned that the root of evil lies in ignorance, but I also want to add to this idea that ignorance is an effect and the cause is the sensory aspect. A person isn't only a cognitive machine, but also a hormonal one. In order for everything to be in balance, a person must be able to regulate their passions in order to keep themselves under control. Only how to do it when people are immersed in a world of wishes, where they say on every corner that you are what you are, so accept yourself the same. It's one thing when the questions concern physical defects that can be corrected or serve mental abnormalities, but passions and emotions are just what a person can fix. just whether people want to fix something, whether the system itself provides the tools for this. These are good questions to discuss today, and the best proof of this is one of the quotes of the Gospel. You are of the father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginnings and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. How many people on the planet are sinning today? It will be fair to admit that all 100%. And how many people realize that they are sinning today? To be honest, almost no one. It is the distortion that has created the system in which we live, and system where suffering is a natural part of life. It would seem that we live in the age of information technology, but the number of ignorant people is so great and there is no end to them. And the funny thing is, people don't even realize it. They are chasing a big profit, a successful success, and constant comfort without even seeing a lie in everything that modern marketing agencies offer them. How is it possible to keep the system of visas in such a reliable state? The answer is obviously simple. In order for the system to have stability, it needs people with the borderline type of psyche. Is it really that simple? Yes, that's right. The borderline type of the psyche, to make it more clear to you, is divided into 4 stages of development. Type 1. A person has slight distortions in emotions, is ready to move to the neurotic level. Type 2. A person has all kinds of addictions from anything and from anyone. Type 3. A person has depressive moods in his head, which is expressed in the form of dysthymia or vivid conditions, last for more than 6 months. The first stage of the development of depressions occurs, and type 4 is when a person already has suicidal tendencies, because the pain becomes unbearable. In this case, we're interested in type 2. These are people with different types of addictions, and here the whole essence of the modern system is revealed. For it was said, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood test he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love them." And now I want to ask, how many people strive to limit their temperatures? Yes, we haven't the whole system, and the communication between people is built only on them. As a result, it turns out that some people smoke, others drink, others gamble, others like sweets, fifths clothes, sixth to live, and someone else expands, and so on indefinitely. Due to the fact that people are strongly attached to addictions, they can't leave the limits of type 2 borderline disorder, and therefore are slaves to the system for life. This is caused by the curtailments. The people distortions in the psyche are leveled through cycle sensations caused by external stimuli. As a result, psychological dependence over the years passes into a chronic stage from which there is almost no way out. Now, think for a second, what happens if people go from type 2 to type 1? At that very moment, people will no longer need psychoactive substances. They will not need sweets to ease stress, because the psyche itself cope with it, no longer need to look for easy adventures to muffle the inner pain. It will completely change the world once and for all. On the point that the world of vice tests not only on the patients, but also on the nails from them. If this happens, the whole system of capitalism will no longer make sense. But today the system exists, and 3 wives also it has said. Whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich will only come to poverty. People are poor in spirit, but they want to emphasize their status in every possible way at the expense of their position, both material and rank. But people have forgotten that true treasures look different. Therefore it will be said to you, people, don't lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, or where thieves do not break and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. How many people do you think have listened and understood something from your words? And how many have decided to change themselves in the name of something more? Of course not. I've met a lot of different people, the poor, the rich, the very rich. And you know what the difference between them is? No difference at all. Some steal to keep their positions, and others want to start stealing to grow up to it. It's just that for most people access is limited, so they complain that they are being robbed, although if they are put in the place of the rulers, they will do the same as their exchangers, and with even greater greed and zeal, because the hungry don't understand what is food. It is for these reasons that people want to live in suffering, because they are looking for ways to realize their vices and as much as possible turn their eyes away from the possibility of knowing themselves, closing their minds with ignorance. When a person rises a step higher and seeks to know the spiritual basics, he chooses other paths so he will follow. It is here that a person is given the answers that he can't and will be able to get living exclusively in the world of material entertainment. Let us turn to one of the ancient teachers, Gautama Buddha. Life is suffering. The cause of suffering depends on the desires. Quote, perhaps the translation is not quite correct, or perhaps I just didn't find the correct translation, but I will allow myself to add a little to this thought. Life is suffering if this life is existence. Life differs from existence in that life is built on needs and existence on vices to which a person is dependent due to the weakness of the psyche and his spirit. Thus, I want to emphasize that the presence of desires is the norm, that the presence of needs is the norm, but the vices to which there is dependence or ignorance from which suffering follows. And you will not able to overcome this vice if you don't look for a reference point that will give you answers to the main questions in life. Unlike humans, God doesn't suffer from borderline disorder, and he is not neurotic. He is often strict, but love in strictness breeds order. Someone may say that it is enough to work on your psyche and then you can do without spiritual foundations, because a person is assembled correctly, then everything will be all right with the world. This idea looks quite convincing, with one exception. When a person begins to grow mentally, 3 traps are waiting for him, which will prevent him from growing this expressed. First, in pride. Second, in need. Third, and fornication. Growing up smart, a person becomes cunning and involuntary, and the expense of these abilities rises above other people. This is internally his merit, but it causes a feeling of genuine pride in his abilities. Hence, pride grows, and after in vanity, and after it comes regression. The other side of the coin is that most people are born in poverty, and the poverty of their being begets the poverty of their spirit. As a result, a person grows only in those areas where he can clothe his need, thrive by, and he becomes a hostage of vicious passions. And the last trap, but still the most dangerous, is born of fornication. Let's be honest, of course we are under pressure. For the state we are annoyed by officials with their own laws, or civil servants on the ground when we need to get a certificate or get a prescription medicine. But nothing pulls a person down so much as the desire to create a social unity in a world of vices. Sales research shows that the best consumer today is a free, independent woman. Constantly, the entire system of vices will build their concepts in such way sales will only grow. Therefore, in order to please a woman, a man must preciously earn a lot and of course spend this money on her. Since men, by virtue of psychology, have a stronger craving for intimate desires, they want to please the opposite sex, those people themselves, without knowing it. Begin with to participate in the race of vicious desires, which keeps their psyche at the borderline level of type 2. Which in turn leads to suffering. Checkmate, therefore, no matter what a person does, they will not be able to log out of the system unless they choose another system. I do not want to agitate anyone or anything, because the choice of a system where the spirit prevails should be free and voluntary. But when the choice is made, you will have to give up a lot, but in the end you will get what you really need. Let's take a look at the results. Existence is suffering. Suffering is the choice of people who are weak in mind and spirit. The growth of the psyche automatically leads to the growth of the personality. The growth of personality inevitably faces a system of traps. The way out of the system of vice is possible only through a system where the spirit of truth prevails. And one last thing, remember, one series will not give an exhaustive answer to everything. We did this deliberately so that you would come to the conclusion that there is no one answer to everything, that the answer to everything lies in the answers to many questions. These questions will be discussed in the next series, which will complement each other so that you have a complete picture. Because the whole, although it is a combination of many details, is not always identical to them. Like the picture, although it is a combination of many colors, but is not the colors from the table intentionally. And in order of the color to still become a picture, this will require the right effort. This is where we will end today. Peace to you and to your home.